Hi. I've been rewriting my instructions for drop spine boxes because when I'm at work and I'm using the same book board and the same book cloth and the same board shear over and over and over again, I realized that instead of measuring from the inner tray to the outer tray and the outer tray to the cover, that I could break it down into measurements at the very beginning and cut all of my boards in advance. So I am putting that formula down in my instructions and just rewriting it in the way that I like to make the boxes. So I realized that there are certain things that are hard to write down, hard to picture, and so I'm making these short videos to show these techniques. So I am gluing up the outer tray today. I've already glued up my inner tray. And one thing I've realized since I'm making these boxes at home during COVID-19 is that without my board shear, when I cut by hand, the cut's not quite as clean. I end up having to sand, and even though it's a nice straight cut, it seems to create a burr and thickens the board a little bit. So I sand the edges with a really simple nail file, disposable nail file tool, and I rub the edges down with my Teflon folder. But it still doesn't seem to assemble quite as tightly as it does when I use the board shear. So what I've discovered is when I make my outer tray, I need to make the base about 1/16 of an inch bigger than my formula in both directions. And I've written that down in my instructions, but today I just want to show you how I cut the top and bottom walls without making a measurement and how I glue it up and weight it. So these are my two width walls. And what I do is I lay my baseboard down on top of the walls so that I can get the measurement for the width of the base. And then I add my side wall, or vertical wall actually, and I draw a line. And if you look at my instructions, you'll see that I have this all drawn out with little X's to cut out this extra board. So I'm going to cut the board right now. I have a cork-backed ruler. I have a Olfa snap knife with a pretty fresh blade. I just snapped it recently. And I'm going to put my thumb on the bottom here to try to keep this from moving while I cut. And I also cut. Yep, and there it goes. It's trying to move. I also cut in lots of strokes, just a little bit at a time, in order to keep it from tugging too much and to get a cleaner cut. I'm going to clean up that edge a little bit. And start gluing. So with PVA, first I'm going to glue up the sideboard. And I'll butter up the edge, just leaves a bead of PVA along the edge of the board without getting too much on the bottom. Put that in place. I weight down the base That keeps the corners from popping up and making a gap, not lining up well. And then I put my weights. And I brush it smooth on the inside. Now the top and the bottom, I want to do the same thing. Butter up the bottom, and you just sort of slide the brush off the edge to create that bead. And then, actually I'll do this side first, then I want to do the corner side. Put that in place, and the vertical wall wants to tip in sometimes at first, so you just have to pull it back and line up the corner. Sometimes you have to hold that in place for just a minute. Check this edge of your tray, check the corner, smooth out the glue, and put your weights there to hold it in place. I'm going to smooth out the glue on the inside, in the corner, on the bottom. Put my weight back into the corner to hold it down. That looks good. And then I'll do the final wall. Again, butter up the bottom. I always have to check to see which side to do. If you do the wrong side, it's okay. You can just wipe it off and glue up the other. Now, another thing is you want to make sure that your corners are nice and flush on top. Press it down and make sure it's not lifting at all. It's up against your surface, your table surface, snugly. I'm gluing up on top of a cutting mat. It's really easy to clean afterwards. You can also put down a piece of Mylar and glue on top of the Mylar. And then it'll just peel off again when it's dry. So now it's underweight, and I'll just wait for it to dry.